What's going on, guys? Shane here. Today we're looking at the difference in styles between MMA, kickboxing, and boxing. They're all combat sports and they all utilize striking. However, there are major differences in the mechanics and the body positioning. Let's take a look. Alright, let's talk about body positioning for these three styles. We'll start from the bottom and work our way up. So the stance in Muay Thai is narrow. You want to be tall. If I get low, I'm asking you to get kneed in the chin, kicked in the head. Instead, I want to be tall so that I can easily check kicks and I can throw and land high kicks of my own. For boxing, I'm going to be more wide. I want to have a sturdier base so that I can throw power into my shots. I can hinge so that I can roll here, and I have good movement and footwork. MMA is going to be sort of in between. Now, one thing to keep in mind is I want to keep my lead foot facing forward for the most part. A lot of times in boxing, if we want power on our jab, the toe faces inward, and we also have that spring so that we can bounce back out for that in and out motion. But if I do that in Muay Thai especially, someone parries my jab and counters with a low kick, boom, very dangerous, okay? So instead, if we keep our knee facing forward or even slightly outward when we jab, less power on the jab, but I can easily lift and check. Now in MMA, again, we're gonna be a little bit lower, a little bit wider, but if we keep that knee facing forward, it's gonna be easier to check the kicks, okay? We have to be low in MMA, obviously because of takedowns. I want my hips to be lower than my opponent, but by doing that, again, I'm getting my head closer to their knee and to their foot. So yeah, I have to be low for this, but I have to be wary for the head kicks and knees to the face. Not only does the height of my hips matter, but it also depends on what angle they're at. In Muay Thai, you want your hips facing forward and your eyes facing forward, so you're very squared off. Yes, your body is open, but it's mostly a teep that's going to come down the center. So we can catch teeps, we can parry teeps and counter. Most of the time we're just wary of round kicks and blocking round shots here. So high checks, low checks, and three-point guards are very common. Once we get to boxing, that's when we really blade our stance. What that means is we turn our hips over. So if I'm facing camera, I'm facing you, you can see how much surface area and how big of a target you have. But if I turn like this, chops it in half, right? I'm not going to be this exaggerated in my turn, but I do want to blade a little bit so that there's less area and I have my elbows in now and I'm guarded. This is a boxing stance. Again, toes are facing inward, hips are bladed. In MMA, again, it's going to be somewhere in the middle, but it depends on your style and it depends on the guy that you're fighting. If he's a wrestler, then maybe you do want more squared hips. If he's more of a boxer, then maybe you do want to blade a little bit. If he's throwing kicks, then you need to be wary, and again, you need to keep your hips a little more squared so that it's easy for you to check those incoming kicks. All right, we're going our way up to the guard now. It really does depend on your style and the way that you fight, but let's just cover some basic fundamentals. So in Muay Thai, my elbows are flared a little bit, and I have a high guard. The reason being is because I like to keep people away. I keep them away with teeps, I keep them away with round kicks, I can just push, I can use the Dracula guard. If I'm fighting a guy that likes to get on the inside and work hooks to the body, then I will adjust. Yeah, then my elbows will come in a little bit tighter. Otherwise, I try to keep them away. I can gate block, okay? Once we get into boxing now, it's a little bit different. We want to get inside the pocket and exchange, if that's your style, again. But you can have a more traditional amateur style with your elbows in, hands up at cheek level, more that Mexican style. You could be more like Floyd with a Philly shell and drop that lead arm, but I do not recommend this for MMA or Muay Thai. Why? Because I did it in sparring once and I got kicked in the head and I forgot what my name was for about 6 hours. Okay, so you want to keep this left hand high, real high, close, like wrist to your ear high for MMA and for kickboxing if you're fighting a guy that has good high kicks or he comes over the top with right hands. All right, we talked a little bit about staying in the pocket in boxing. Well, it varies a lot, especially with the clinch for MMA and for Muay Thai. In Muay Thai, we want to be tall. We want to put our weight on top of the person, hands on the inside, controlling either the arms for elbows, the steering wheel position, so that we can land elbows of our own, or we're cranking down on the head trying to break their posture so that we can land knees to the body and to the face. In boxing, it's a little different because we can't really clinch. We can go over under is what I recommend to avoid the rabbit punches from coming in, but otherwise we want to work until the ref breaks it up. In MMA, there's so many different things. There's those two, and then there's the wrestling on top of it. They can go for body locks, they can go for a double leg, a single leg. So these are all things that you need to be wary of. So it's better to get underhooks, at least one underhook in MMA is a safe bet to have. But again, it really does depend on your style. Are you trying to land elbows? Are you trying to get a plum? Or are you trying to just work inside fighting and keep them off just a little bit for your boxing? The last thing that I want to talk about is on the topic of distance and range. Now, boxing is the most limited, however, it seems to be the most calculated because these fighters are so specialized on just using the hands. It could be just a simple in and out jab. It could be the way that Pacquiao, from that southpaw stance, puts his left shoulder in the lead and fires off that rear hand lead shot, or what I call the Scotty Boy punch. Once we go into Muay Thai and kickboxing, we have the teep, we have the inside leg kick, we have flying knees, a lot more variability. And then once we go to MMA, that's when it gets really unorthodox, right? If I'm fighting a guy that maybe has a point style karate background, he could step in with a hopping side kick. It could be a wheel kick. Now these are things that you now have to consider. The more you know about your opponent, the safer you will be. But again, it really just comes down to keeping that lead hand up, making sure your feet are in the right spot, making sure you're agile with your movements and effective, and just being wary of anything that could happen. So MMA, yes, much more that can happen, but it's almost like the jack of all trades. But if you know someone is specialized in wrestling or karate or Muay Thai, you know what kind of things to be wary of. People always have tricks up their sleeves, so be ready for that. Just always be one step ahead of them. Think about Sanchai, right? That guy seems to be so specialized and his fight IQ is through the roof that he's always dictating the pace. He doesn't really give them a chance to be unorthodox or to set anything up because he's always doing it to them. Alright guys, thanks for watching. So remember, it really does depend on your style and your opponent's style. However, these are good safety cues to follow, especially if you're transitioning from boxing into Muay Thai or kickboxing into MMA. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below and I'll get back to you. Until next time, be sure to subscribe to get the fight tips before your opponent does. I'm Shane with Fight Tips for the underdogs.